job interview is one of the most anxiety-provoking situations most people can find themselves in, even when they go to plan. But what happens when you have your worst interview ever? Our guests share their worst interviews ever in the hope that you will take something from their mistakes to have a more successful interview outcome. Some of the stories are horrific and some are just downright embarrassing. Let's join our host, Kevin O'Reilly, the interview skills coach with over 25 years experience in the fields of coaching and recruitment. Let's welcome our guests to the show.
Today we have on the show Andre McClean, a director from Strangford Search, who helps lawyers make strategic career decisions and match top-class individuals with the best firms in the London market. Andre, you're very welcome today.
Thank you very much, Kevin. A pleasure to be here.
It is great having you here. You are our first lawyer connector on the show.
I feel honoured.
Oh, no, the honour is definitely all mine. Our listeners are all sorts of people. And having you on the show today gives a real diversity and dynamic to this show. So thank you very much for coming on.
Good to be here.
So do you want to tell all of the listeners just a 30-second snippet about who Andre is?
Yeah, I'm a legal recruitment director. I run a business helping lawyers make sensible moves in the London market, usually between law firms rather than lawyers within companies. I've been doing this for 9 years. I grew up in Ulster, in North Down, and I moved away for university, and I was then a lawyer for 10 years before going into this current job. I've got 3 kids, and I try to keep myself active and balance things around work and family.
Well, it's a queer task in itself to have that balance between work and family, isn't it?
It is indeed. Yeah, it is indeed. Full on at times.
Yeah. And I know you work specifically in the London market, but you are from Northern Ireland and you do live in Northern Ireland and you move back and forward, isn't that correct?
Yeah, that's right. So the work is based in London and I need to be over there very regularly to meet. I think there's no substitute for meeting people face to face. And a part of my job is helping people apply for roles, but a much bigger part behind the scenes is just listening to people's story about how their particular practice has developed. They might be a property law partner, or they might be a banking lawyer, but a junior one. And everyone's got a slightly different mix of the types of work that they do and the types of people that they work with, and the sort of hours and culture and just life goals as well. And it's very hard to be able to give sensible advice if you're not meeting people and spending a good deal of time just listening to where their career's at, all the good parts of it and the stuff that they would change if they could. And then hopefully I'm one of the voices or the voice in their ear when it comes time to really think seriously about whether they're in the best place for them as individuals. So yeah, I'm over all the time. But yeah, the family's based just outside of Belfast and down the road about half an hour. So works for us, but it's the 4 a.m. alarm clock for the airport is never that welcome.
I don't know if it's an alarm or it's a jolt out of your dream state, isn't it? And it's not nice always, but you know what? See, when you love what you do, 4 a.m. is 4 a.m. and it's just another time in the day.
Yeah.
You know, some people only know that there is one 4 o'clock in a day. You know that there's 2.
Yes.
You know, you get to see that as well. Whether you enjoy it all the time or not, it's there's definitely 2 4 a.m s.
That's right. And also just who knew the sun comes up in the summer by 4 a.m. It's just things you learn. And it's sometimes on the road it can be like something out of 28 Days Later. It's like, where does the zombie apocalypse come? Because I'm not seeing any life or any cars on this road. But yeah,
it sounds bliss.
Yeah, it's actually, once you're out of bed and ready and fed and watered and on the road, it's quite a nice. You feel like if you've almost achieved you've accomplished the day before it's even begun.
Isn't that wonderful? That's wonderful. Yeah. I think that's why there's a big push with the 5 a.m. club. You know,
Yeah,
I
yeah,
would see a lot of social media stuff around the 5 a.m. club, 5 a.m. club. Well, I'm part of the 5 past 6 a.m. club.
yeah.
That's where I
That's still
am.
punchy. That's commendable.
I like
Um,
to be a little different, Andre, you know. I don't like to fit those typical stereotypes.
yeah. You're
I,
waking up and seeing Jocko Willink, post photos of his watch saying, 5 a.m. to prove that he was up, and you're like, man, if you just take that extra hour, I'll catch up with you by at least half nine.
well, I know how my body works. I know how my circadian rhythm works, and I get more done from that time. It's
Yeah,
taken me a long time. It took me years to work out that 5 past 6 is my optimum rise time.
yeah,
So yeah, it works for me, and I think everybody should have that intention to work out what their optimum rise time is to get the
yeah,
most out of the day. Some people it's 5 a.m., some people it's 4 a.m., some
yeah.
people are night owls, work all night, sleep all day.
My operating system works best when I get to the gym at least once a month, and that's something I'm struggling a little bit at the moment to do, and blaming work and blaming, the kids, and it's just like, just get through the door of that gym and sort yourself out.
Andre, I don't want to put this responsibility back on you, but it's all you. It's all yours. You have to own it. It's maybe
100%.
not just on the priority list at this moment in time, which happens when life gets in the way and work gets in the way, and we use that as an excuse. But yeah, it's just slipped off the priority list. That's all.
Yeah, but I'm not too worried. I mean, Christmas is coming up, and I plan to eat really sensibly for the next 3 weeks, so it shouldn't be any issue at all if I can't manage to get through the door of that gym doing my workouts.
It almost sounds like you've decided that you're not getting through that door for the next 3 weeks. That's what it comes across as. Andre, now before we get into the interview, I ask a question of all my guests, and it's
Yeah.
just to allow our listeners to get to know you a little bit more. Okay. Do you have any hobby or hidden skill or talent that not very many people know that you'd like to share?
I have a hobby that a few people know, but it's probably my favorite hobby, and that's I like to play tennis. None of this pickleball, none of this paddle stuff. Just good old honest tennis. And I like it because I like racket sports, and fairly quick and of decent hand-eye coordination. But beyond that, it's quite a good little escape when you're trying to focus on someone across the net. It's physical. You're running a lot. It's quite technical, thinking like, what is my grip? What am I doing right and wrong? And it's quite strategic. So you've worked out that the guy across the net knows that you don't have a strong backhand, so he's targeting that. And when we're doing all these things at once, the physical, the technical, and the strategic, it's very difficult to be worrying about that email in your inbox, or maybe that recruitment process that hasn't moved as quickly as you thought it would, or something you forgot to put the bins out at home. Whatever it is, it's sort of like a little mini escape, but one that you only have to walk a couple of hundred yards down the road with a tennis racket in your hand, to do. So that's probably my hobby. It's nothing secret or special. I'm an average player, but for me, it's a brilliant little escape, without having to get on a plane or do something else.
Yeah, and I think touching on something you said there about that escapism, it's about having that being present in that moment, and that's where the escape comes.
Yeah,
Because of that, if you have that constant thinking and the anxiety around what might be or what should be happening or what shouldn't be happening, all of that's in the future, and you have come right back to the moment in time where you have to think about what you're doing. You have to think about it, or it's just not going to work for you at all. And it's that release, and it's like going to the gym for some people. It is that release. It's almost like getting rid of that negative energy and just being in the moment. Because if you have 100K over your head, there's no way you're going to be thinking about an email that you should have sent. You'll be thinking,
yeah,
try not to drop this on my head, get this over my head and lift. So
yeah,
there is that real need, I think, for some physical activity with regards to even stress relief.
yeah. I think you're dead right. In my case, it might be 15K above my head, but uh, take it.
Well, I only said 100K because I've seen somebody else doing it. There's no way I'm lifting 100K these days. No, no, definitely not. Definitely not. That might be my max on a deadlift, but you know,
I was
that's
going to
no,
say deadlift. I could maybe get there, but I'm not breaking any records.
no,
No
nor I,
records.
nor I. We're both at that level where I don't think we'll be breaking any records soon.
Yeah.
Although I do have a friend who has just broken the Northern Ireland record for powerlifting at 52.
Oh wow.
So she has. Wonderful, absolute wonderful achievement. So
Yeah.
never say never is what I'm thinking.
It's I used to think those sort of things like it's just something like tennis is a real sport or football is a real sport. I used to think things like sprinting or weightlifting, it's not a sport. You just do it. There's no mental side at all. But then you
Mm,
watch any of those documentaries, whether it's about Glenn Ross or Schwarzenegger or Linford
yeah,
Christie, and you just realize how that is not just a physical achievement for your friend. It's a massive planning, months of planning,
yeah.
nutrition, focus. I have a friend who got into running when she was about 32 and has become an elite runner. So we're on the verges of I think
Oh,
the GB team, certainly ranked for her age in the UK. And she has a running coach to talk her through. I thought you don't need a coach; you literally just run. Like that's what you're doing. You're just running. But there's so much to it, and I've definitely have a newfound respect for some of those more sort of route one sporting endeavors that I maybe wouldn't have appreciated in the past.
yeah. I think a lot of people don't appreciate the amount of mental strength that's needed in a physical activity.
Yeah,
And it's that mental strength to get up and do it again when it didn't quite work out the first time.
yeah,
Say no to the late nights. Say no to the extra mince pie at Christmas.
yeah,
It's all of those real mental strain that gives you the resilience to be world class.
yeah.
And as you said, even adding in the coaching element makes a huge difference. Huge difference.
What I'm preaching to the converted here on that. I realize, but yeah, 100%. It's key for everything. And like case in point, my inability to get through the door, of that gym. They say that the hardest weight in the gym is the front door, just clearing aside time and then not coming up with these silly excuses about my cat was sick and I'm not
Mm,
feeling well. To just get in the door and get it done. So
that's
yeah,
it. That's it. You know, I'm a great believer in thinking that there are people out there who would love to be able to get into the gym, and I
yeah,
have that option,
yeah,
and I want that option.
yeah,
So why wouldn't I? You know
yeah,
what? Just why wouldn't I? And listen, I get it. We're all very busy all the time, but prioritizing your health,
yeah,
I think it has to be first or second, because
yeah,
if you've no health, you've nothing else. You've no
yeah,
job, you've no life, you've no business, you've no
yeah,
career. If you've no health, and I'm talking physical and mental,
yeah,
so maybe it's just a rejuggling of priorities is something that we all probably need to take on board. Is how do we do that, and how do we make that time and understand what is really important? Because as I said, if you don't have your health, you've really nothing. You've absolutely nothing.
yeah.
Now you're sounding, and we had a bit of a chat before we started, but some of your career has been in different aspects of being a lawyer. So you were originally a lawyer. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, well, first of all, it's a really common route. It's probably too common a route for people born in Ulster, and I think it's a throwback to parents wanting you to do well at school. My parents left school at 15. You
Mm.
always hear on things like LinkedIn or other places, oh, my parents, didn't go to university. I was like, big deal. Like none of my mates really had parents that seemed to go to university, apart from the odd doctor. But you were pushed to do as well as you could in terms of the books. But there was very little creative thinking in terms of the options, and that's both from my career as advisors at school, and it was sort of become a lawyer, a doctor, or an accountant. If you're good with numbers, become an accountant or good at science, become a doctor, good with words and writing, become a lawyer. So I like the sound of all of that debate, and A Few Good Men, or L.A. Law, or Ally McBeal, or Suits. The dramatic courtroom. And despite most lawyers that I spoke with saying it's not always really like that, I didn't believe them. I thought, well, it will be so dramatic and so exciting, and there'd be so many verbal, battles in court. So I studied law in Dublin, went across the water to train at what was then the second biggest law firm in the world, Linklaters, and I qualified into litigation. I was shocked when I landed in my first seat in banking. I thought it would be, guys like buying and selling, the city of London. And I found, quiet 25-year-olds just changing square brackets to curly brackets on a page, or making different clauses in a contract correlate with various definitions. And I thought, this is very fine detail, meticulous work. And I was not expecting. I was expecting people to be shouting, in court, or smoking a cigar with their feet up, saying, let's close this deal. And my expectations couldn't have been farther from the truth. But I give it 5 years at that firm. I was juggling then about 4 or 5 different cases, and I found it quite challenging to stay on top of all the facts and the deadlines for the next part of that case. And I thought, well, I'm working crazy hours. I'm barely hanging on to the control of these matters. It's probably that this firm is just too full on, too frantically paced. It's one of the big 5 law firms. It's the second biggest, I think, by head count in the world. I thought, well, I'll move to a medium-sized firm, a slightly more sensible outfit, where the pace will be a bit slower. And that's what I did. And I took a slight step down, slight step in salary, and certainly got a bit more of my time back. But when I was, my job there was writing letters to the FSA, what is now the FCA, on financial white collar fraud cases, white collar crime, explaining to the FCA what my client had done and how they were or were not, guilty of what they were charged with. So it's very exciting stuff. It was someone's liberty, at stake. It was a lot of work for individuals, which I enjoyed. But we were getting 60-page letters from the FCA, and then replying with maybe 200 pages. And as I was going through the process of trying to draft those massive letters, I just looked around and saw people walk out the door at 6, 7 o'clock. And if I was doing my work and getting my hours in, I felt like I needed to be there to about 10, 11 o'clock at night. And I thought, well, at the old firm, it was a full-on firm. Everyone, was super smart, with loads of Oxbridge, intimidating, types, in public school, and people who could carry themselves well. And I thought, in that old firm, I was just another fish in the pond. But here at this smaller firm, there are definitely a lot of people who were brighter, better, faster than me. But there were also a lot of people who just, you were no more special than I was. Why were they walking out the door at 6 and I was in there till 10? And at that point, I realized that I am dyslexic, and got myself tested and diagnosed. And there were a few things at play, from slow reading speeds, weak processing speeds, poor working memory, all of these things that were really just sticking a spanner in the works of my ability to read some documents from the regulator, and then write as much as I could. And in law, you're judged by every 6-minute segment of time. That's what you bill the client for. And if the law firm's being run properly, there is someone somewhere standing over your timesheets and saying, in those 10 6-minute segments, in that 1 hour that you were working, Andre, how much were you able to produce? And it was just so obvious to me that it was not a winning strategy to be in a job where I was getting judged to see how much I could read and write in 6 minutes, because I was slow and I could do the work. I felt it was my judgment was as good as anybody's, and I could learn the rules, but I was just really, I didn't want to do the job. So the minute I got my dyslexia diagnosis, the scales sort of fell from my eyes. I'm like, why GCSEs have been so difficult? Why A levels have been so difficult? Why university? My grades were all over the place. And it just made sense, and it was so clear to me that I wanted out of that profession as quickly as possible. So I moved in-house to Lloyd's Bank to be an in-house lawyer, where I wasn't under the pressure of the billable clock, and I just didn't really enjoy that job. So I did it for a couple of years, and then I moved into recruitment, where I've been. So I was a lawyer for about just shy of 10 years, and then I've been in recruitment for just coming up to 10 years in a few months' time.
Wow. Wow. Do you mind if we just talk a little bit about the dyslexia? If that's okay.
Please, yeah, it's
Yeah.
my hobby horse. If you got 3 hours, I can talk all day. Yeah.
What age were you diagnosed with it?
I would have been 31 when I got diagnosed
Okay.
with dyslexia. Yeah.
And I know you said there that it changed and things sort of started to make sense then, GCSEs, A levels, university grades, etc.
Yeah.
Was there something else? Was there a real realization that, oh, okay, this is what it is? Almost like that weight.
100%. Yeah, lift. It was your metaphorical 100K weight just disappeared from above my head. No, it was massive relief. And I remember I just really struggled. I did 11 GCSEs, which is quite a lot back then, and I just remember thinking how am I going to get through? Oh, each and every subject, I was confident enough, but just the weight of everything at once, and trying to organize my own time during study leave. I thought I'm not going to get through this challenge, and it was a big challenge just to mainly to organize myself. And then once I did that, I ended up coming second in the year. There was a guy above me who was a maths genius, and just nobody was ever beating that guy. I just thought, how can I have like struggled so hard to just get through this, and then in the end aced it. Same thing happened with A levels. I was walking home I took my foot off the gas a little bit in upper sixth, and I was doing modulars and chemistry and further maths, and I got like E's and U's in my modules, and I just thought, like, I don't really have any academic interest in any of these studies, any of these subjects that I'm studying, but yet I'm facing a proper, full and final exam in May, at the end of this year, and I've got to now motivate myself, and just the challenge of getting through that stuff. I felt like I'd aced the GCSEs, was waiting for my prize, and the prize was you get to do another 2 years of exams. You get through those, and then the prize is brilliant. You get to do a 4-year law degree where you've basically no structure whatsoever. You've 7 or 8 hours of lectures a week, and then they just wave you off and say, I'll see you in May for an exam. And for me, that's an absolute nightmare. I like structure. I like breaking
Mm,
down, things, and with sport and everything, all the other distractions with uni, I found it incredibly challenging. And the reason I was doing it was because I could obviously pass the exams. I
yeah.
wanted to honor my parents and the sacrifices that they'd made. I didn't want to be irresponsible. So you pick a sensible job, and you go and get trained, and then see what happens. But having been through all those exams, been through the degree, been through law school, and then passed my training contract, it sort of dawned on me that I kind of discharged my duty. I worked hard. I got to where, I kind of wanted to be, and from there on in, it was sort of up to me whether I wanted to continue working. And when I was told by a clinical psychologist that my brain worked in a different way, and that whilst I might be as smart as the next person, my speed of working was not as good. My organizational skills weren't as good.
Mm.
It was just a massive weight. I was just so relieved. I just went to the nearby pub. It was about 1 o'clock in the afternoon. Got myself a massive pint of Pepsi Max. It's probably not good for an ADD dyslexic. I just phoned my wife, or my fiance then, and I said, "Best news ever. Being diagnosed as dyslexic." And she just sort of didn't really know what to make of it. Like now, she would sort of look back and say, "Okay, yeah, a lot makes sense." But she had just had news that her granddad was gravely ill, so she wasn't really in the headspace to be like, "Oh, that's brilliant, Andre. Tell me more." But it was suffice to say, it was just a really clear indication to me that all of those struggles, at uni and elsewhere, it wasn't because I was being lazy or
Yeah.
feckless or anything else. It was just I was doing my best, and I had this condition, which is a legit condition, that meant that it wasn't just quite as straightforward for me to learn. Um, so yeah, that was a huge relief to me.
Wow. I'm sure it was. But what even made you think I need to go for a diagnosis? Obviously
Yeah, yeah,
something happened, or there was an accumulation of events that got you
yeah.
to a certain part, and you thought there's something here that is different.
Yeah, it was just down to arrogance, really. So what I said earlier about that firm Linklaters, they hire superstars, they hire straight A students, they hire, Oxbridge Blues, they hire people who've achieved academically and in many other areas of their life. And in that context, I'm no better or worse than most. But at the second firm that I was at, there were some people of that sort of background, super bright, super ambitious, but there were also people who had come into the firm from high street practices down in sort of Heathrow, doing sort of these small shipping firms. Their GCSEs and A levels weren't superstar. You were chatting to them at the water cooler, and it wasn't like they'd come up with some brilliant take on AI or on the future direction of a case or where the firm should go. They were just very normal people who'd managed to get through a law degree. And I saw these guys walking out the door at 5, 6 o'clock, and I just knew, like, I'm not the cleverest guy in this office, but I'm definitely brighter and more able than that person. But I know that person has drafted 10 pages of stuff to the other side or the
Mm.
FCA or the counterparty for every three that I've done. I just knew that they were doing more. They were getting their work done on time. They were leaving, and I thought there's something wrong. I'm a bright guy. I'm working. I'm trying my best. I am in here till 10 o'clock, and I'm just really getting by. This can't be the right job. There has to be something at play here that means that I am not able. I wasn't sitting on my phone on Facebook or TikTok. I wasn't, going for 5 hour lunches. There was some problem. If I was doing my best, and these guys were walking out the door before me, there was something just not quite right. The same thought had dawned on me at university. I thought, well, it's taken me a long time to do these essays. I'm in the computer labs, at 4 o'clock in the morning, typing it up again. There's something maybe not right. And I did one of those online dyslexia tests, and it just came back to say you're probably not dyslexic. So I put it out of my mind
Mm.
for another 10 years. So I wouldn't necessarily recommend the tests. If you can afford to do it, just bite the bullet and spend your 3 or 4 thousand pounds, whatever it is, to get someone qualified and proper to assess you. It's the best money that I've ever spent.
Mm. And,
And
and, and, and I picked up on something else you'd mentioned there, ADD,
yeah,
attention deficit disorder,
yeah.
and dyslexia.
Yeah, yeah. So that the ADD wasn't tested for at that point, but there's a lot in when you're in professional services. There's a lot of just noise out there um, about performance and people popping up with, and you'll have seen it in coaching world. And there's a lot to it. You talk about Dave Brailsford's
Mm.
theory of marginal gains and how the Tour de France they got all the hotel rooms looking the same and they went ahead of the riders. And I just
Yeah.
thought this is all great, and I'm sure there's a few snippets from Tony Robbins or whoever it happens to be that might help me in my job, which is sort of like a sales job, really, professional advisory
Mm.
sales service. But actually, I responded to my dyslexia by getting out of law, which was a really good move. But that's sort of all I've really done. I've not really looked into it in much greater detail in terms of how can I use the strengths of it and kind of get around the weaknesses in my day to day life. And I
Hmm.
thought there's probably something else there, especially my wife noticed it, asked me to do something around the house and suddenly I'm doing something else, or you go on your phone to, you're watching Home Alone. You're like, well, whatever happened to Dan Stern, the guy who played the burglar? And 4 minutes later, you've not been watching the movie. You're you're reading about his time at Juilliard or something, or the second president of. It's just the mind is obviously there's a lot of lateral thinking, which can be good for creativity. It can be really bad when you're trying to focus on something. So I just thought, it's worth checking out that as well. So I went recently, about 4 years ago, for an ADD assessment, and that I got that. There wasn't the hyperactivity there, so I've no H, but yeah, definitely ADD. Again, I've not. I wouldn't say I've really capitalized on that diagnosis, but it has helped me sort of work out that in order to perform at the level that I want to, and help the best lawyers in the market make the best decisions that they can, I need to have people helping me with the stuff that doesn't, that gets in the way of that, be that formatting CVs or doing admin, or accountants, doing their thing. And I've brought the support in around me to
Yeah.
do the jobs that I'm not that well suited to in my business.
Well, you've created a strategy in actual fact that you know what works, you know what doesn't, and you can't know everything. So you've brought in the right people to do those things for you. And clearly it's been very successful having a business for 9 years in the London market.
Yeah, it's I've enjoyed the work. I was saying to you before we started that I was just complaining about my jobs. Oh, I don't like this legal thing, to a few friends who are all successful lawyers and having way better careers than I ever had in law. But they were saying to me at the time, look, Andre, you like people, you like going for coffee, and forgive me for saying, but you're quite fond of the sound of your own voice. What about recruitment? Like, that's a job that would trigger all of those interests. Um, and you're bound to know more about the market than the people who are phoning me, cold calling me at my desk. So that's how it all started. I've actually only been running this business for 5 years. I did 4 years at a startup recruitment firm, and then decided to break out on my own. After that, it was quite a lean operation. That first firm, there was no real research support. Guy didn't like to spend money on tech. It was very, very lean, and it was a lifestyle business that he didn't want to grow. So I thought,
Okay.
well, if I'm working, it's a cutthroat. Recruitment is pretty unregulated, unlike law. You don't have to have fancy degrees to do it. There's very little to sort of keep recruiters in line, apart from things like the Bribery Act or GDPR. But because the barriers to entry are so low, that means you've got everyone doing it. Every 21-year-old under the sun
Yeah.
who will have a go at recruitment, and some of them will do well. So it's a crowded marketplace, and to work through that with no PA, no assistants, no one really help you for those 4 years. That I did find that an achievement, and my legal background helped me because I knew who these firms were, who the partners were, what sort of work they did. But it was a tough start, and it was good to get through that first 6 months. It was really good to get through, and then after, I suppose, 3 years, I thought, yeah, I kept asking, what are your plans to build and grow this business? And it was clear that there weren't any plans. It was make as much money as we can so I can buy houses. And I thought,
Oh,
well, that's great for you, but long term, me and my family, that's probably not a winning
yeah.
strategy. So been doing this, running Strangford Search for 5 years, and yeah, we're focused on the London markets, and helping people make good moves.
And that's wonderful, isn't it? It's something really positive that's come out of, I'll not use the word a negative situation, but it's a situation that you probably didn't think to find yourself in at age 31, 32, and being diagnosed with ADHD and dyslexia, or sorry, ADD and dyslexia, and thinking, okay, all right, what do you do with this now? It's great knowing and having that diagnosis, but it's again, what do you do with it? And you took action upon that, which is wonderful, and it's brought you to helping other people. And I'm sure you understanding your own diagnosis helps you communicate more impactfully to others. Because if you can understand it, then people without dyslexia and ADD should be able to understand it.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think there's less probably ability on this side of the Atlantic to pick up on things like dyslexia. It's often not discovered. And when you look back, you can sort of put the pieces together. I had a really good English teacher who said my verbal reasoning in class was, just better than anyone's, but my written work was really ropey. I do a really good essay, and then I do a one that just didn't really land well. And there are comments like that, like the discrepancy between spoken word and the written word. That's a red flag. So stuff like that, and often people go through school and university, and it's never really picked up. When you hand in an essay at uni, the lecturer doesn't know how long it's taken you to do this, and you don't really want to say, oh, by the way, I finished this off at 5 in the morning, and in the computer labs, because you don't want to look stupid. But it's very, very lonely sitting there in the dark at 5 a.m. You're not getting up to get the plane to London. You're sitting there thinking all my mates are asleep or on their way home from the club, and I'm sitting here, and this has happened again for the 10th time that I'm really late with this piece of work. But yeah, the Americans are almost the opposite extremes, like out of an endeavor to make sure that their kid has as much time for the exams as Americans generally don't like exams anyway.
Yeah.
But in order to make sure my kid has as much time as they need, we're going to test them from 18 months old for every sort of neurodiverse condition. So I think we've some way to go without going wild and overdiagnosing.
Yeah.
And there's still an education piece there. There's some big academics, guys like Christopher Hitchens, who will say where dyslexia doesn't exist.
Yeah.
It's not a thing, and it's very hard to know where to sort of start. You've got someone that smart. It's just saying it's really just an excuse for a failing educational system where we're not taught properly. The 3 R's and just very, very old school ways of thinking. And a big, because it's a spectrum and there's no real one definition of it.
Yeah.
There's a big divergence in the thinking from doctors and scientists. I just
But
find it interesting.
yeah, but this must help you think differently, which probably works in your favor with what you're currently doing. And you must see a lot of potential clients coming through who you could say, yeah, I think you have dyslexia or ADHD or ADD or, some other neurotypical diagnosis that hasn't been diagnosed yet. And I'm sure you're sitting there thinking, yeah, yeah, you definitely do. You definitely have ADHD because you haven't stopped talking and I can't get a word in edgeways and your energy is so high that it is so infectious. And I know everything about you in this 3 minutes that we've just spoken. And you know what? I get that, and I have clients who are like that as well. And it does from time to time, I start thinking, I wonder, is there a different way of looking at people with neurodiversity? Can we look at them as a values-based system as opposed to what you see? And what I mean by that is within the interview process. I've sit on a lot of panels as well and prep people for their
Yeah.
interviews. And it's what I generally understand is that the interview process is unfair. It's not a great process. It's a process we have. It's not a great process, but it's equally unfair to everybody. But it's more unfair to those who have a neurodiversity. And I sometimes think, I wonder, can we make this more values based? But even with regards to values, whenever you're looking at one of your clients and you're thinking, right, I know what the values of this organization is over here. Do you try and match those values up with that organization, or do you look at other aspects? When I say look at, does other aspects outweigh that values between the client and the business?
Yeah, so I guess the main thing is when if you're working on a partner search, instead of if you're working on an associate search, you're looking for someone who's good at just drafting those documents or getting that work done, quickly and well. And then if they're doing it at firm X, they can do it at firm Y. And because they bill out their time by the hour, then they're an asset to that business. They're every day that they're there, they're generating income. With a partner search, it's more about moving a practice. So that is more that is more about, does the practice fit? So the firm that you're looking at could be very good at corporate and litigation and real estate, but it could be very weak on finance because they've lost a couple of big finance partners the year before. And then your candidate is coming in with a finance practice. So then when you look at values, you would want to be looking at, well, what's the person I'm moving like? Are they just really nice and successful, regardless of the fact that they're quite nice and easy to get on with and high on agreeableness, or are they real? Are they a bit disagreeable? And the reason they've been able to build their practice is because they're pushing and they're fighting for that work all the time. And if it's the latter, then is their new head of department at this new place, or the new head of the London office, are they disagreeable as well? And will that make will they get on together and realize that they're both alike, or will they clash? So it's very much, when you say values, it's very much, do the people get on with each other? And that's often quite a it's a thing where I obviously that's one of the value adds that I would bring, is that I know these people, I know what they like, and I know I've worked with difficult, pushy, sort of bullying type bosses, and they always want you to stand up for yourself and to show them that you're confident in the advice you're giving. And then other bosses will want to make sure that you're never ever rude to the secretaries or to the other side. So people have different way of looking at the world, and another way of calling out values. So it's a sort of, is this a marriage, in terms of the practice that's moving, but also is it a marriage in terms of the individuals? And then secondly, like how big are people's egos? If my person's getting paid, an astronomical sum, £1 million a year to do their job, and they're going to move, for 1.2 million a year, then is that going to put noses out of joint at the new firm at which they're working? Because a partner there is working away quite happily, sees somebody coming in getting paid more than them. Are they going to then look to move? So is the hire worth it from the firm's perspective, on the basis that it might create a bit of disruption down the track? So I think when values is I would just say, is it a personality match? Do people think the same way? And if they don't, and they have different ways of coming at things, are they able to work together for the benefit of their own teams and their own clients?
But if we're sort of pushing you for an answer with regards to a value that you most like to see in a candidate, so that you feel comfortable enough to offer that candidate to one of your potential employers or firms, what would that one value be?
I would say openness for me. So before I get to the candidate, I would be vetting them and make sure that they've got the sort of background that it puts them in a position where I could help them. So they've got through their training, because I don't do any graduate recruitment, and no firm would pay a recruiter a fee to hire a graduate. It's just the way that the market works. So they have to have got through that. They have to be at a good firm doing good work, and that's basically the criteria. And then if you meet them in person, which I would be wanting to do, then I would want them to be really open with me about their own career. It's a confidential chat, so I'm not going to take what they say and broadcast that to the market. I'm not going to tell them about, I'm not going to share the stuff that they're sharing with me, unless there's a reason to, and I've got their consent to it at a later date. But if a person wanted to make a move because they were getting underpaid, I would love them to be open with that fact, open about that fact with me. If they're moving because they don't like their boss is a tyrant, then I would want them to be open with me about that.
Yeah.
We wouldn't go to a new firm and say, oh, their boss is a complete tyrant and badmouth them. We would find a way to convey in a professional manner the reasons for the move. But if a candidate and a lawyer doesn't feel that they're able to be open with me, that will create all sorts of problems down the track. If they're shielding their real reasons for moving, then it sort of hamstrings me a little bit in being able to represent them and make sure that I can get them the best deal that I can get. So I love it when people are feel that they can be open, and hopefully my approach is one where I'm phoning them and saying, let's meet. You might want to move in 3 years' time, but let's put a face to the name, and I can find out a bit more about your practice. So some of the best candidates are the ones I've been speaking to for quite a while, and they feel that they can be open with me, and then we're on the same page, and I will work with them to present them in the best light and get them the best deal, should they ever choose to switch firms.
It sounds almost like you're like a football agent,
Yeah,
building up that
that's
stable in
sort
the
of
background as you go along.
as a double-edged sword, a high octane, high value, and then obviously some extremely shady practices and some of those previous football deals. But yeah, that's it. You're there to represent somebody. I mean, for example, a lot of the US firms in London, the big attraction for them is that they're a bit leaner, they're growing, the teams are growing afresh. It's a new team, or it's a much smaller operation with potential to grow really big, and when that happens, then it takes people along with them, and you can be part of the success story. But also they pay a good deal more than the UK firms, but because it's London, because it's England, Ireland, we've got this omerta about being able to say, I'm getting quite well paid at my current firm, but I'm working awfully long hours. I would like to get even better paid. You can't say that, so you've got to position things in a way that's just a bit more professional, and you're there as an agent to represent the other person, to make sure that they know what's up ahead. Is it a 3-stage interview process? Is there going to be a written test at stage 1? Are they going to have the chance to meet the associates on the ground at their level to verify what I'm telling them about the firm and to verify what the partners are telling them about the firm? So you're there to guide, you're there to remove obstacles, you're there to make it as smooth as possible. And if all goes well, rather than being a football agent, you're almost there to be the referee. You shouldn't really see me in the process. Just, directing traffic and removing obstacles and keeping things moving. And then hopefully at the end of the day, the client firm ends up with someone absolutely brilliant, and the individual has got, whatever their reasons for moving were, we fixed them and found them a solution to that in a great firm. So that's how I would describe it.
You're a great connector of dots.
Yeah, and that's probably where the lateral thinking or the dyslexia plays out. In a number of ways. I think I've got a higher risk appetite than a lot of my peers and the folks that I'm working with. Says a man who jacked in his legal career to go and start at the bottom as a recruiter. It's fairly obvious. But there was a time in university when they brought in this new course, and like, no offense to the great British and Irish institutions, I studied at Trinity in Dublin, but there's often a lot of looking across the Atlantic and thinking, oh, what are they doing at Brown or UPenn? Let's copy that. So they brought in this. We had 8 modules to do for our 3rd and 4th year, and that was going to be our degree. And they said, well, look, we're bringing in this broad curriculum because in the States, nobody does a law degree. First off, you do this sort of general degree of arts, and you've got lots of different modules. You could be doing American history 1 minute and then economics the next minute. So let's bring in broad curriculum. And instead of you doing, a thesis on Guantanamo Bay or, Islamic law or something like our company law, then we will let you do a module on politics or a module on psychology, or I think it was even one on film. And I sort of said to a lot of my mates when this was announced at the start of 3rd year, I thought, this is great. This politics course, this is all you've got to do is write between 3 and 5 essays. You can choose. So 3 essays if you were going to be lazy, and you only have to write 500 words. So like, I'm no mathematical genius, but 3 times 500 is 1500. That is less than a single essay for for one of your modules, if you're allowed to do an essay for equity. and and that's going to be the whole course. So no stress in April, May,
Mm.
June for the exam. That's basically it done. And 95% of my colleagues are like, not sure this is going to fly. It's not law. It's sort of, diluting the integrity of my law degree. What will firms think about this? And it just didn't make any sense to me. I just thought, well, firms are hiring people who've done history degrees, and then they're putting them through a conversion course. Firms are hiring people who've done chemistry degrees, medical degrees.
Yeah.
Why do they care if one of your 16 modules at university, or one of the 8 modules that count, happens to be a politics? It's such a no-brainer. There's
Yeah.
zero risk attached to this. A lot of people are not doing that. So I did the politics degree, and the way a law degree works is that it's very hard to get into the high 70s. You might get an 82 if you ace your tax law thing, but nobody's getting 90% in my day anyway for a law degree. And it's very hard to break above 72, 73. So I got like an 80% for this politics course. And then everyone turns to me and says, "Oh, you played the system. You've got extra points." I just thought, well, like, it's happened to work out well for me, but you had exactly the same information that I had a year ago. And of course, then for fourth year, they opened the scheme again, and almost everybody was jumping in this broad curriculum. So it's just like, it's something that's so obvious to me. Like, these are all clever people, but it's just such an obvious point. What just wasn't obvious to them
Yeah.
at all. And I've had it before in our personal life. We're buying a house and looking at mortgage rates, whatever, and I see things as almost completely free of risk, whereas my wife's sees the figure and the bank balance and thinks, oh, this is a big investment. So it's just a different way of looking at things that can be helpful in certain circumstances. And when it comes to your original point of joining up the dots, be like, that person would be perfect. They do infrastructure finance. They'd be perfect in so and so's team across the way. So that does help quite a lot.
Yeah, I'm sure it does. I'm sure it helps with not just those joining of dots of people, but a joining of dots of everything in your life. You mentioned houses, and you sort of look at the risk and go, sure, there's very little risk there. Let's get on with it. I think if a lot more people had that sort of attitude, but it's I'm not saying that um you're just going to take the risk for taking the risk's sake, but you're looking at it, you're weighing it up and going, okay, that's fine. I think differently. Let's go with that. And it seems to be there's the pattern throughout your life of you doing that, and it's worked out for you in your favor. But on the point of thinking differently, I'm making the assumption that you help support people in through the interview process within that particular firm that they're going to.
Yep.
What are your 3 red flags that you say to them, this is an absolute no, do not do this when you go in?
Yeah. So I wouldn't have 3 red flags. I would say the main thing they need to get right is to get their story right. So they'll go into the interview, and they'll have a cup of tea or a coffee, and they'll sit down, have a bit of small talk about the appalling London weather, and then the partner will turn to them and say, look, thanks for coming in this morning. Appreciate your time. Do you mind sharing a little bit more about why you're here today, or a little more about yourself? And whatever way it's phrased, it will be an invitation for that person to tell their story, and that story needs to be well scripted. So if you're there for, because you want to get to maximize your earning potential, you're not allowed to say that. You can't say, I'm just here for the money." because
No.
it conveys to the person that they are basically a vehicle for, to help you get rich. It's not about the opportunity or the firm. So you can't say that. If you're there because you're having a hard time with your boss, that's fine. It's a perfectly legitimate reason, but you present that in a certain way. Why are you having a hard time? Is it because lack of progression, lack of recognition, unreasonable requests over the weekend to do your work? There's ways that you can present that to get the message
Hmm.
across. So the story is really key, because there are three things that someone's wanting to find out as an interviewer. Do they like you? Which hopefully the people I send to my firms, they will like. Secondly, are you technically good? Again, hopefully they are, and that I coach people in ways in which they can show that they're technically strong. And the third question is, why are you here? And if you can't answer that question of why are you here, why are you interested in the opportunity, they'll almost never take it forward, because they'll think, well, I don't understand why they're coming to me. They've got a great job where they are. They've
Yeah.
not been able to explain what attracts them to this job. So that last question, why are you here? That's where you need to work on your story, and you need to have some, hopefully, a sensible agent who is able to help you craft that story really well. So there's loads of no
Yeah.
nos, like turning up late, saying you want more money, being rude to the person on the front desk. But the main thing I'd say is you need to have your story straight and ready to explain.
I think this is a universal issue and challenge for most people going for interviews is talking about themselves.
Yeah,
More so here, actually, in Northern Ireland, we have this real almost mental block when someone says, "Tell us a little bit about yourself and why you're here."
yeah,
That is almost like the time when everybody shuts down. My business was built on that question alone. That question alone, because there are so many individuals out there that do not want to talk about their strengths. They quite easily and strangely happily talk about the areas they need improvement on, or the areas that they lack strength in, but they really find it difficult talking about what they're good at. And it's so hard for me to sit and listen to that, because the people that I get coming to me, they're skillful, they're talented, they're experienced, they're knowledgeable, sensible ways, probably the best at what they do in their industry, but have that sort of doubt about themselves. Their work they have no doubt about, but it's themselves that they have that slight doubt about. So I actually created a model called the T model for answering that particular question, which is very, very simply as TEA. So today, earlier, and after. So why are you here today? Literally, tell me why you're here today. Who are you? Why are you here? Well, I'm applying for the job because my name is Kevin, etc. How did I get here? Well, I'd done my degree. That's the earlier. How did I get here? I'd done my degree, went into this law firm, went into this law firm, went into this law firm, and now I'm looking for something different. I'm looking for a different challenge, and that's where you sort of come in and work with those reframing of the reasons. And then what are the aspirations, or what is the after? So what do you want? Where do you want to go? Where do you see yourself in 5 years' time? And the idea behind using that little model is that it actually reduces the amount of questions that the interviewer has throughout, because you're pretty much answering them as you talk through that one simple structured model. And by the time they say to you four questions down because they're reading off a page, and where do you see yourself in 5 years, which is another common question, you've already answered
yeah,
it. And all you're doing is elaborating on what you've just said.
yeah.
So it takes the stress away, takes the pressure off you, and makes life so much easier for everybody in the room. So they can get to a point where it's a conversation as opposed to an interrogation. And I find that works so well for a majority of my clients that go.
And it also means that if you can answer succinctly, um, why are you here, and get people comfortable with that, they'll work out in 30 seconds, 60 seconds whether they like you,
Yeah,
and they'll also hopefully work out that you're technically strong. That just frees up. If you're in for 45 minutes and you can get them comfortable within the first 10 minutes that you're right for the job, they can then spend the rest of the interview telling you about them and selling their offering. And the more the larger part of that 45 minutes or hour that you can have them talking to you, then the more information you have to go away and say, okay, my agent's telling me this is the best firm ever. I've now heard lots about it. I can go away and I'll pick up with someone who once worked opposite them on a deal, and you've just got more info to go away and work out the answer to the question: are these guys worth seeing again? Is it worth a
Yeah.
second date with this company? Um,
And that's what it is, really, isn't it? It's almost like a, is this worth a second look?
yeah, and I think you're right. You're dead right on Northern Irish folks just not being very good. We can't take compliments, and I think there's a bit. We're quite good at sort of putting arrogant punters in their place, like catch yourself on, mate, or he's behaving a bit Mike McGoldrick, which is probably what some of your listeners are thinking about me. But we're good at that, and I think that's a good thing to have a culture. But where it impacts is that we're a bit shy about sharing the good stuff that we've done.
Yeah, we are a little backwards in coming forward. And it's frustrating because the interview is the time when you should be shining. You should be stating the facts and the information. And I don't use the word bragging or, egotistical, because it's not. You're in an interview, they don't know you, or they may think they know you, but it's an opportunity for you to share with that person in front of you exactly what it is you can do and what benefit you'll bring to them because of your skill set or experience. And you should take that opportunity every single time. You should never miss an opportunity to do that. Whether you feel a little bit uneasy doing it, then you're going to have to get a little bit more comfortable feeling uneasy around an interview process. And I know that might be easier said than done, or I wouldn't have a business, clearly. But it would be lovely if I didn't need to have this business. If there was no need for me to be able to have to prepare people for what is, in essence, a conversation as opposed to an interrogation. Now, and Andre, we've come to the point in the interview where it's the quick fire round.
Yeah,
So, for those people who don't know what this is a set of questions that I will ask quickly, and you will answer just as quick with one of three answers. It's either yes, no, or pass. Are we ready to go?
I'll do my very best. If I stall on an answer in a cowardly fashion, I will blame it on my dyslexia and my slow processing speeds. So that's my
We
trump
can't use that
card.
excuse here, Andre. Can't use that excuse here. Okay, are we ready then?
Go for it.
Okay. Is it acceptable to wear pajama bottoms to a Zoom interview?
No,
Is it okay to bribe the interviewer?
no,
Is it wise to ask the interviewer for a selfie together at the end?
no,
Should a candidate smile during the interview?
yes.
Should you answer the first question with a dramatic pause for effect?
Maybe
Is that a pass?
pass. Yeah,
Should women wear high heels to an interview?
yes, if they want to.
Is it acceptable to ask the interviewer how much they make?
No,
Should you high five the interviewer at the end?
no,
Should a candidate swear during an interview?
no.
And is it acceptable to bring your mum to the interview for moral support?
Absolutely yes.
Okay. How was that?
That's good. I was the only one I was really doubting. Like, where, if you want high heels, wear high heels. The pajama bottoms is the only one I really doubt. I just think, like, your own psyche, you must be thinking, I'm taking the mick here with this. It can't be a serious meeting for you, if you've done that, unless it's your way to sort of ground yourself in some shape or
Mm.
form, and you're super nervous. But I just can't see that. I did have a guy once who was going for an interview that I hadn't. I was quite early in my recruiting career, and I hadn't worked out that he just wasn't that serious, and he had something else sort of lined up that he wasn't sort of sharing with me. But he came into work with no shoes. He said, like, can I wear trainers to the interview? This is way pre-COVID, and there weren't fancy trainers. They were beaten up Asics that had probably been through about 4 marathons, and we were just like, oh, mate, let's just reschedule for another time, or maybe even I lent him some shoes, but it was just going to be a car crash interview, turning up with this head of corporate at some firm wearing a pair of beaten up trainers.
Oh my
Um,
goodness.
but yeah, I think things have changed. They are definitely a bit more relaxed in terms
Yeah.
of attire these days. But
And what would that attire potentially look like if you're going to meet some of those heads of firms?
um, I would still say to people, you know, err on the side of being overdressed. Like,
Yeah.
you know, normally you'd be going in suit, shirt, no tie. But if you're going to meet a head of a team, better to be there in a suit and tie, well dressed. If they want to turn up in their polo shirt or their polo neck, then great.
Hmm.
They'll probably laugh at you for being overdressed. Far better to have that than to walk into a room in a polo shirt and have some guy, you know, in a three-piece suit and cufflinks, just thinking, well, in my day, you know, you would turn
Yeah.
up well dressed and you're clearly not taking this seriously. Because if
Okay.
he does, I mean, it might be fine because it's clearly not the firm for you anyway.
Yeah.
But if he does form that view, it's very hard to disabuse him of that notion during the interview. So I would say,
Yeah.
Aaron,
That would be difficult.
yeah. So yeah, suit, shirt, no tie. Um, if you're a
Okay. Okay. That's good. That's good to know that because I know that lots of industries are different and the change really happened after COVID and during COVID when everything seemed to become a little more relaxed. But you're right. You should always overdress for the occasion and you'd be better being overdressed than underdressed. And that would be my advice to everybody and anybody that's going for an interview.
yeah, it's quite funny that just the changes in trends. Like I turned up to work. I just been in Kenya for 6 months doing a bit of legal aid work before I started my training. I turned up with this goatee, which I think looks great. My wife and almost everyone else doesn't share that view. But I turned up. It was like clean shaven, you know. Other than that, I was well kept. But I had nobody really. One guy the night before I started work, who was also a trainee at this firm, said, "Well, yeah, you'd be in the minority." And he basically said there'd be a couple of weird tax partners who'll get away with having facial hair, and no one else will have it. And that proved to be true. No one said anything to me until about halfway through my first seat, I my eyesight was sort of struggling with the reading, and I got some glasses, and my boss said that my glasses give me the credibility that my goatee had taken away from me. And then I just got rid of it. I thought it's just easier to get rid of. I'll wear my glasses just to show you how credible I look with my glasses.
Oh, yes, yes, yes.
Um,
Yeah.
and then in my next seat, I got rid of my goatee, and the guy said, "Oh, thank goodness," because on your screen for your Facebook internally, you have the goatee, and I thought, "Oh no, I'm going to be the one with I'm going to have the trainee with the facial hair." And then fast forward 10 years, so you're pretty much a pariah. You know, you couldn't be a competent lawyer if you had facial hair. Fast forward 10 years, everyone was having sort of the beard.
Designer stubble and beard, designer scruff.
And I just got rid of mine just to be contrary. But it's so funny, like something that was completely unacceptable, and you weren't allowed to speak about it. You're just like, you're clearly not competent. Um, and then 10 years later, everyone's got their sort of heads of
Yeah.
my old firm, walking around with a beard. It's it's a good
Well,
thing.
well, my wife, I just recently started to wear glasses. My wife said, maybe you shouldn't.
Uh,
It adds a few extra years to you, Kevin. And I thought, oh, right, okay, thanks,
harsh,
thanks. It was
harsh.
harsh. It was harsh, but I think the lesson that we all learn from this is that you have to remember who the interviewers are,
Yeah,
and you have to remember, are they old school? What are their values? What do they see? And sometimes, as you quite rightly said there with the goatee, it's maybe industry related or sector related that there
yeah,
are unspoken rules and expectations on people. And that's potentially some of the reasons why some of those questions are in this quickfire round because there's some of those that are industry specific that are almost expected but not never said.
yeah,
And when you don't do it, it's noticed more so than if you did it.
yeah,
And that's unfortunate. And it is getting to know that industry and getting to know that. And someone like yourself within that role in that world, you'll have those insights, which is fantastic. And you'll be able to share those insights with people looking to go into those law firms. But now we've come to the most important part of the interview, and this is all about why we're here. It's to hear your worst interview ever. So, Andre, over to you. Let's tell the listeners what has been your worst interview ever.
Worst interview ever was it's not really dramatic. Have had interviews where the people were getting cross, because the answers weren't right, and I tended to go into interviews and just make it up as I went along because the recruiters that I was using weren't that helpful or prescriptive in terms of what I should say and how I should say it. So I just went in and told them exactly what I was thinking, and sometimes that worked well, and sometimes it didn't. But so it wasn't dramatic or fractious in this interview, but it was a process when I was trying to get out of law into recruitment. I went to a recruitment company and went through 2 rounds. And at the second round, the interviewer was like, "This is brilliant. Let me just go and grab the head of the firm. They would just love to meet you." And the head of the firm comes in and just sort of like leans back in the chair, puts their foot up on the table. I think they had pulled like an Achilles or something. There was some reason for them to have their foot, on the table, and just sort of sitting with a pen and paper, just looking at me and just firing questions at me. I'm like, why did this law firm fail, and what happened here, and what are you doing, and what do you think? Why do you think people move jobs, and just all of these questions that were quick fire. And I tend to know when I've done well in an interview. I think most people know whether it's gone quite well. And I was giving good answers to these questions. I was just sort of unmoved. And then he sort of left the room. I thought, well, that wasn't as well received as I thought. And I think I gave pretty good answers. And I know I did. But the first interview then sort of sheepishly comes back in and just sort of mutters a few things. And then the agent told me later on that day that it wasn't going to be they weren't going to offer it. They were going to go for somebody who was already a recruiter, and rather than somebody who was coming from a law firm. And at that point I was ready to make the move to to recruitment, and I was a bit gutted that it hadn't worked out. So it was just that disappointment of something that was going really well, and then just it wasn't there anymore. And that is part of a recruitment process that most people will deal with in their life. Maybe a job you're not even that excited about, you get phoned about it, you throw your hat in the ring, and by the end of the third interview you're desperate to get this job, and then suddenly it disappears, it gets put on hold, it gets withdrawn. So that disappointment was probably the worst sort of experience. But there's definitely been other interviews where people have got upset, or they've left you sitting in a waiting room for half an hour and then just not had the interview. There's lots of that sort
Mm.
of stuff.
So it sounds a little unprofessional, doesn't it, when you say that out loud like that? Left you sitting for half an hour to 45 minutes. The
Yeah,
one of the directors comes in and puts his foot up onto the desk, and
yeah,
it just sounds a little like, what is going on in this place? If their time management is poor as this. Now, I
yeah,
have heard of occasions where they purposely do things to see your reaction, engage your reaction, because you will be faced with potential curveballs throughout your career anyway. And that does happen. You'll get a client who comes in and every second word is a swear word, and you're like, "Oh, okay, if that's not what you're used to." Or you'll get
mm,
clients who are filthy rich and come in with holy jeans, dirty trainers, and hair scruffed all over the place.
yeah,
And it's those curveballs that sort of throw you. But maybe during the interview process, they're testing for that. They're testing to see what that reaction was. And as awful as not getting that job, you probably took a lot away from that. You probably just said, okay, what else do I need to do here to get to where I need to be? And obviously you change something for the next. And
yeah,
that's like every interview, and it's like everything in life, if something doesn't work, you just don't stop.
yeah.
If it doesn't
And
work, you find out how to make it work.
it comes around as well. Like that firm then wanted to hire me in about 6 years later once I had proved myself. as a recruiter, if you can do such a thing, to prove yourself as an agent. And I didn't meet that person. It was still head of the recruitment firm, and I didn't meet them at any stage through the recruiting process. And they made me meet everybody else. I mean, from the other co-head to the office cat. It was sort of it was a 3 or 4 stage process, and I was always suspicious that they hadn't wheeled this guy out to say, we'd love you to join, and in the end, I decided that I was going to set up my own business anyway. But I probably wouldn't have gone with them because of that. There was just that niggling question of like, I don't understand the reason, I don't understand the previous process. I don't understand why I haven't met you this process. I know you're clearly, you will conduct your business in a less orthodox way than some of the law firm partners that I'm used to working with. So stuff can come around, and if someone's a lunatic in an interview, there was one partner, now retired, I'll not name the firm, but he used to interview people with his back to them. He'd just turn the chair around and ask them questions. It's like, who's gonna respond
Wow.
well to that? Very few people. So
Wow.
and it's obviously my job to try and try and get people around that sort of character. Or it may not in his case, but there may be people who are a bit odd like that, but who are actually really user friendly to work with once you're in the door. So again,
Yeah.
that's something you could kind of help people with. But yeah.
Andre, today has been absolutely fantastic. I have learned so much, but there's 3 real main takeaways I would love to offer up to our listeners right now, just from our conversation that we're having. The first one for me is to research the organization, because within every industry, within every sector, there is these unspoken expectations, unspoken rules that are expected and they're wanted and are almost needed for you to be part of this industry or sector. And it's worth your while to take the time to research. And the best way to do that is by reaching out to someone who is in this world and just having that conversation. Someone like you, someone who's even doing the job at that time. And I always recommend that people reach out to whoever it is on LinkedIn and ask them a question about the role that they're currently doing. Now, it could be a different company completely, but it's always just asking a question. And it seems to get real favorable returns for people because they get that inside sort of look behind the curtain, whereas not very many people do. The other one is to watch out for the curveball, because you just don't know when someone's going to turn their back to you, when someone's going to throw their leg up on a chair, or the inconsistency of one interview process to another interview process within the same organization. Companies don't understand why they can't get good people. There's almost a lack of clarity, and there's almost a lack of consistency that puts people off, good people off. And you'd almost be wanting to know who these good people are that don't want to come and why they don't want to come, because there's potential there that the firm isn't running as efficiently and as effectively as it can do if there's not a lot of people wanting to come to there. And it's not always about money, as you know, as a recruiter. It's about work-life balance, it's about title, it's about holidays. There's loads of different reasons why people want to change jobs and want to go to a new organization. But the big one, the big takeaway I want everybody to take away from is the getting your story right. There are those common questions that are asked in most conversations and in most interviews. And the one about, listen, why are you here? Tell me a little bit about yourself. Why are you wanting to leave your previous job? Those questions are so, so important. And being really open and being really honest about that in a tactful way is so important for everybody. But it does take a little bit of a tweak and a skill for somebody to be able to manage that and deliver that with impact during the interview. And that's where the likes of both yourself and myself will come in very, very helpful for people who are wanting to move on to that next level, or just move to an organization that they think may bring them value or may give them value. Andre, this has been absolutely brilliant. Honestly, thank you very, very much. If anybody here wants to reach out to have a conversation with you, where can they do that?
They can do it. There is a section on, so the website is Strangford Search. and that will have I'll have a direct dial for the business. It will have a contact at strangfordsearch.com. Feel free to reach out. If you're a lawyer in London who's already qualified, then I can help you at any stage think about next steps. But even if you're a student or you're someone thinking about a career in law, I can't professionally open a door for you for an interview, but I can give you some help and guidance as to how you would research becoming a solicitor, becoming a barrister, and how it differs between Dublin, Belfast, London, and even other international cities. So I'm always happy to speak with people and help people think out. I spent 10 years as a lawyer doing a job that wasn't really for me, and I could have worked that out a little bit sooner. And if I can help someone either make a choice to go and become a lawyer and have a great career, or steer away from it and do something else, then I'm always happy to be a help in that way.
That's wonderful. Thank you very much, Andre. Thank you.
Kevin, thank you very much for having me. It's been a pleasure, and have a lovely weekend.
You also.
All the best. Bye-bye.
For more details about our guest, or if you would like to be a guest, go to www.interviewskillscoach.co.uk/my-worst-interview-ever, or find us on Facebook or LinkedIn. And remember, on the other side of a successful interview is the life you deserve.